Forgotten Brothers by Lycan Wingbat, a Batman All Media Types fanfic, rated for general audiences, with additional tags for angst with a happy ending, emotional hurt comfort, Lazarus Pit side effects, alternative universe, soulmates, platonic soulmates, alternative universe, wings, Jason Todd tries to be a good sibling Duke Thomas, trust-based soul bonds, hurt Damian Wayne needs a hug, Damian Wayne gets a hug, protective Duke Thomas, platonic soulmates Jason Todd and Duke Thomas, platonic soulmates Jason Todd and Damian Wayne, Jason Todd and Damian Wayne meet in the League of Assassins, Duke Thomas and Damian Wayne are siblings, and reconciliation. This is the sequel to Wings and Brothers, and the second part in the Of Souls and Wings series. Summary. Damian started. He sounded so vulnerable. You don't remember me. Damian's voice broke on the me. You were my Aki. Damian's tears slid down his face. He tried to wipe them away with the back of his hand, but they kept coming one after the other. Jason wanted to lie to him, wanted to tell him anything but it was the truth. Jason had forgotten him. Or, where Jason finds out that he has a soul bond that he doesn't remember. The sound of the window opening hurled Jason into awareness. He pulled his right arm out of the cocoon his wings made around Duke's sleeping form, grabbed the knife from under his pillow, and threw it at the assailant. They dodged it with ease. Oh, it's you. Jason's head flopped back onto the pillow. Damian bristled like an angry cat, his wings fluttering with unspoken anger. What are you doing here, kid? Damian scoffed. I'm 13, Peter. I think I'm old enough not to be called kid. Why do you have to keep calling me by my middle name? Jason's voice was muffled by the pillow he was burying his face in. I'll stop calling you by your middle name, Peter, when you stop calling me kid. Damian snipped. Fine, I'll stop calling you kid. But you haven't answered my question, shorty. Jason said, lifting his head to glare at Damian sleepily. Well, Peter, Father wants you and Thomas to join us for brunch at noon. Damian said, not looking happy at the prospect of having to spend a meal with Jason. Why does Duke get called by his last name and I don't? Jason asked, just to be annoying. Because I respect Thomas more than I respect you, Peter. Damian retorted sharply. And if you ask me, Jason interrupted with a, I didn't. But Damian paid him no mind. This is an excuse for Father to try and rebuild his bond with you, he grumbled. Jason scrubbed his free hand across his face with a groan. When he removed his hand, Damian was glaring at him. What? Jason whined. He was not awake enough for this. You do realize it's detrimental to leave your soul bonded within the first 24 hours of activating the bond, Peter, Damian said with a scowl. He's right here, shorty, Jason said, shifting his right wing ever so slightly to reveal Duke with his head pillowed on Jason's arm, drooling. He hadn't stirred from his slumber once since Damian's uninvited arrival. This seemed to make Damian angrier. He huffed, crossing his arms. Okay, why are you so angry? Why would I be angry? You are obviously attentive to Thomas, and taking wonderful care of him. Look, dames, I know you don't like me, but... Why would I not like you? You care greatly for those you love. Damian spat out the word. A groan came from underneath Jason's wings. Great, now you woke him up, Jason said, glaring at Damian. Duke stretched, his wings pushing out of Jason's embrace, much to Jason's dismay, to sprawl out behind him. He sat up to look at Damian, thoroughly ignoring Jason sitting up and his attempt to bundle him back up in his embrace. Hey, dames, what are you doing here? Duke asked, his voice thick with sleep. Father wants you and Peter to join us for brunch, Damian said, honestly looking like he'd rather go looking for Killer Croc in the sewer. Sorry, not sorry, but we won't be going. Right, Duke? Jason said confidently, but faltered when he felt sheepishness coming from Duke's end of the bond. He turned to his bonded, only to find him wincing apologetically. "Duke, come on," Jason bemoaned. "Jay, is it really that bad to meet Bruce for brunch?" "Yes, it is," Jason griped, flopping back on the bed. "Please, Jay?" Duke asked, with big eyes, pleading, bombarding Jason with a mix of love, hope, and earnestness through the bond. Jason caved in like wet paper. "Fine, you menace," he said, mock-punching Duke in the shoulder. But he couldn't hide the fondness filtering through his end of the bond. Damian studiously ignored the interaction. "But I need a shower, and we have..." Jason squinted at the bedside clock and groaned. "An hour before brunch." An awkward silence settled over them after Jason went into the bathroom. "So, why are you mad at Jason?" "He is an ignorant buffoon," Damian said sharply, drawing his wings tightly into his back, hugging himself. "You know, if you tell me, an objective observer, what he's being ignorant about, I might be able to help," Duke said, shrugging. "You are bonded. You could not be objective if you tried." Duke gestured for Damian to sit next to him, with a soft look. He sat down, pulling his knees to his chest and wrapping his arms around them. "Let me try anyway?" Duke asked, with a pleading look on his face. Damian relented. "Fine." The only one in this family with a will strong enough to refuse Thomas was Cassandra, and no one could refuse her. "We had a bond when we were in the league together. He was catatonic at the time, but when he came out of the pit, he closed off his side of the bond," Damian revealed, his eyes never leaving the floor. "And now he acts like we didn't ever have one. No matter what I do, the only thing I haven't tried is confronting him outright." Duke was reeling. He slammed his side of the bond shut to hide his warring emotions, ignoring Jason's questioning prod. His eyes darted back and forth between Damian and the bathroom door. Every part of him screamed that Jason wouldn't do that, and that there had to be a good explanation. But when his eyes settled on Damian, he knew that wouldn't be a comfort. He also knew that Jason was only human, and could make mistakes. He needed to talk to Jason, but Damian needed him first. "I don't know why he did that, Dames," Duke said, hugging Damian as close as possible and smoothed the puffed-up feathers on the ridge of his wings. "But you didn't deserve it." Damian's wings shuddered, and he clutched Duke like a lifeline. "I'll talk to him," Duke promised, "and I'll kick some sense into him. Bond or no bond." "What if he still doesn't want anything to do with me?" Damian asked him, his voice muffled by Duke's shoulder. "Then you and I ditch him and brunch for Batburger and fly into the sunset together," Duke promised. "It's almost noon." "And fly off into the midday sun together." Damian laughed wetly, and Duke tucked Damian under his chin. When Jason walked out of the bathroom, with the base of his wings slightly damp, Duke let go of Damian and stood. "Stay here, Dames. Jason, come with me. We need to talk," Duke said, his side of the bond eerily calm. Duke led them into the living room. "Want to tell me what this is about, Sunshine?" Jason asked wearily. Duke crossed his arms. "Well, when were you going to tell me that you're bonded to Damian, but acting like you never knew him in the league?" "What?" Jason looked at Duke incredulously, their bond turning murky with confusion. "I've never been bonded with Damian, Duke. Damian says you were bonded in the league, and that after you came out of the pit, you closed your bond and ignored any of his attempts to reconnect." "Duke, I was catatonic. I couldn't have activated a bond." Jason defended himself. "I didn't even know Damian in the league." Duke paused. "Jay, what do you remember about the league before the pit?" He didn't know what was worse, Jason purposefully ignoring Damian, or forgetting that they had a bond to begin with. Jason picked up on Duke's train of thought, and looked sick when realization hit him. "You don't think..." He trailed off. Duke nodded. "I would have noticed," Jason breathed, his side of the bond turning into a storm of emotions. "I would have noticed," he repeated weakly, sitting down fast enough to be considered falling, and burying his face in his hands. Duke knelt next to him, and put a hand on Jason's knee. He didn't want to keep pressing, but he had to for Damian, and Jason's sake. "What do you remember from before the pit, Jason?" Duke tried to calm the worst of Jason's emotions with the bond. "I remember digging my way out of my grave," he trailed off. "Then I remember coming out of the pit." Guilt poured off of Jason in waves. "I need to tell him," Jason said, standing up abruptly. "I'll go get him." Not even a minute later, Jason and Damian stood facing each other. Duke tried to leave and give them space, but was stopped in his tracks by the twin, wide-eyed looks his brothers sent him, so he stayed hovering in the background. Jason stared at Damian, trying to come up with something better than, "I don't know," but nothing sounded right. Nothing could properly express how sorry he was. "You were the first person I ever bonded with," Damian said, clenching his fists. Jason had never felt this guilty after killing. "And you left me." Damian's voice broke. "And you acted like you didn't even know me when I came to Gotham." Jason felt his heart break into 1,000 pieces. Damian believed that. He thought that he had been abandoned and cast aside. And it dawned on Jason that Damian's strange behavior today was him lashing out at the thought of being replaced, a feeling Jason knew all too well. Jason knelt, and Damian stopped speaking, dumbfounded. "I'm sorry, Damian." Jason opened and closed his mouth, probably looking like a fish, desperately trying to find the right words. "I don't remember anything from when I was catatonic," Jason blurted out, trying to diffuse the anger he could see building in Damian. It worked, but the heartache on Damian's face was almost worse. "You..." Damian started. He sounded so vulnerable. "You don't remember me." Damian's voice broke on the me. "You were my Aki." Damian's tears slid down his face. He tried to wipe them away with the back of his hand, but they kept coming one after the other. Jason wanted to lie to him, wanted to tell him anything but it was the truth. Jason had forgotten him. "I'm sorry." Because what else could he say? Damian felt like the ground had fallen out from underneath him. He had thought he had done something, or hadn't been worthy of Aki's affection to begin with, and that after the pit had restored his mind, Aki had seen that unworthiness. But to learn that Aki couldn't even remember ever having a bond, Damian's knees buckled under the weight of the very thought, sending him to the ground. But Jason caught him and pulled Damian into the tightest hug, tenderly rubbing his back, but staying away from Damian's wings, as he moved them so he could sit instead of kneel. Damian started sobbing as he held on to Jason with a death grip. Duke moved to kneel next to them, placing a gentle hand on Damian's shoulder, causing the younger boy to cry harder and hide his face in Jason's shoulder. "Why are you doing this?" The utter despair in his voice dug a knife into Jason's chest. "I mean nothing to you," Damian cried. "We still have a bond," Jason murmured. "And if you're okay with it, I'd like to fix it." He tucked Damian under his chin and locked eyes with Duke, who was practically oozing with encouragement and reassurance. Damian couldn't believe that Jason wanted him after he had treated him with such contempt over something he couldn't control. "I've scoffed, mocked, and insulted you over and over again. Why would you ever want a bond with me?" "You were hurting. You thought I abandoned you and then replaced you." Jason swallowed. "And when I thought Bruce replaced me, I did a lot worse than insult him. Some he regretted, and some he didn't." Duke wrapped him up in the warmth of being known. "So who am I to hold it against you?" Damian sat back to look at Jason in the eyes. "You truly want me?" he asked, looking so afraid and yet so heartbreakingly hopeful. "Yes, I want you," Jason affirmed. "If you'll have me," he asked, afraid that it was too late. "You idiot, of course I want you," Damian said, flinging his arms around Jason's neck. His shoulder dug into Jason's throat, but he didn't complain. He just moved Damian so he could tuck him under his chin. Duke shifted to hug Jason and sandwich Damian between them, carefully placing himself in between Damian's wings, and covered his brothers with his wings. Jason felt a bone-deep feeling of relief that wasn't his own make its home under his sternum. He cradled the small sapling of a Soulbond and let his own relief and happiness wrap around it. Duke's bond thrummed steadily in Jason's heart. The relief turned to contentment. He sat there basking in the emotions of his two bondmates. Yesterday, he didn't even have one soul bond, and not even 12 hours later, he had two. They all startled when a loud ringtone broke the silence. Damian fumbled to untangle himself so he could answer his phone. "What?" he hissed to the caller, resembling a kitten that had its nap interrupted. Damian turned sheepish at the caller's answer. "I am fine, father. No, I am still here. There was a development. I am in Todd's apartment. Thomas is here too." Damian shoved his phone towards Duke. "Hey, B, we're all alive, and there isn't any blood." Duke reassured him, but didn't have a chance to say anything else because Damian pulled his phone away, already speaking to Bruce again. "Are you satisfied?" Damian huffed. Duke whispered, "Tell B we'll still go to brunch." Jason and Damian groaned. Jason had hoped Duke had forgotten, and Damian had hoped to convince him to skip. "We are still coming to brunch," Damian said, looking like the words physically pained him. Duke ruffled his hair, adding insult to injury. "Goodbye, father." Damian put his phone back into his pocket and nuzzled himself back into Jason's arms, both of them firmly ignoring Duke's attempts to reassert himself in the hug. "Come on, dames, Jay, it's not that bad. Cass and Steph are going to be cooking," Duke said, trying to entice them. "Jason, could you tell Thomas that he is dead to me?" "Oh, so now you're calling me by my first name," Jason teased. "I can go back to calling you Peter." "Shut up now." "Come on, Damie, Jason," Duke whined. "You still love me, I know it." Damian ignored him and simply hugged Jason tighter. Jason's amusement flowed unchecked from his end of the bond. "You're not gonna let go anytime soon, are you?" he said, still ignoring Duke. "Correct." "Do you want me to carry you?" Damian thought for all of 2 seconds. "Yes, Aki, I do." Notes. This is my Tumblr, where I occasionally post updates on my fics. Comments are welcome if you feel like leaving one. Even a key smash or emoji will make my day, and I reread them regularly. Thank you so much for reading. If you enjoyed this, you can go down to the description and follow the link to the author's original work. If you enjoyed this reading, you can subscribe, or go down to the comments and suggest something else I should read. I will talk to the author and see if they're okay with it. Thank you for listening and have a great day.